Thank you, Your Honor. We are present in the state of Ohio versus Jacob O'Nusick, case number 25-CR-289. The defendant is in court, represented by counsel. We were last here on June 5th, where the defendant withdrew his previously entered plea of not guilty and pled guilty to count 2, theft, a felony of the 5th degree, count 4, robbery, a felony of the 3rd degree, amended count 5, kidnapping, a felony of the 2nd degree, count 8, robbery, a felony of the 3rd degree, and amended count 9, kidnapping, a felony of the 2nd degree. The court ordered victim impact statements and scheduled sentencing for today. I believe those statements have been provided to the court, and the state's prepared to proceed with sentencing.
What did you say count 5 was amended? Is it amended count 5?
Yes, count 5 and count 9 were both amended to be felonies of the 2nd degree instead of felonies of the 1st degree.
Okay. Mr. Watson?
Thank you, Your Honor. May it please the court. Mr. O'Nusick is a troubled man, Your Honor, with a troubled past, and I know that these particular crimes and other crimes that he's been convicted of and served time for are violent crimes. Bank robberies, holding people hostage, threatening their lives. All of this, I've spoken to Mr. O'Nusick numerous times over the past couple of months, and all of this stems from the fact that he was a severe drug addict, and he was committing these robberies for money, for drugs, and obviously that's no excuse at all for what happened here and what happened with his prior offenses, and he's paying for it dearly, Your Honor. As the court is well aware, Mr. O'Nusick is 3 years into an 11-year sentence federally for basically the same crimes, for armed robberies of banks and financial institutions. We're here hat in hand, Your Honor. I know this court has a lot of discretion this afternoon as to what it can do with regards to sentencing. I'm not here to make excuses for the Mr. O'Nusick that committed these crimes, but I am here to try to outline to the court the Mr. O'Nusick who has spent the past 3 years in prison as a changing individual. He is not the man he was when he was committing these offenses, and his plan for the future. While incarcerated federally, he has been taking a bunch of courses, specifically a paralegal course. He's been keeping himself busy. He has a detailed plan, an outline, if you will, for his plan, not only for while he's incarcerated, but when he gets out, hopefully, eventually. No matter what this court may do, there is going to come a day where he is free. I'm hoping the court will look at what he's been trying to do to better himself with his time. He is not causing any problems in the institution. He is not just sitting on his butt. He's keeping his head low. He's trying to stay focused, going to school, doing what he needs to do, helping out other inmates with their legal correspondence and motions. Your Honor, Mr. O'Nusick is extremely remorseful for what he did here. He knows that he terrified, flat out terrified people. I'm sure the victims no doubt had feared for their lives. Mr. O'Nusick, at the time, in his mind, he was just putting them there so he can get the money so he can get drugs. As this court is well aware, when it comes to addicts, they will do a lot of things that normally people wouldn't do when they're not under the influence or have that addiction at the forefront of their mind. But Mr. O'Nusick has spent the past 3 years incarcerated. Obviously, he's sobered up. He is a different person, both mentally as well as spiritually, as well as who he is as a person. Again, Your Honor, I know that this court today can fashion a wide variety of sentences. I'm asking the court to consider the fact that he still has 8 years to go, at least 8 years to go on his federal sentence. He very well may be violated through the adult parole authority when he's done with that. Not to mention the fact that he's going to have 5 years of supervised release federally when he's out. I'm hoping the court will take a moment, listen to Mr. O'Nusick, outline what he's been doing, outline who he is today as a person, and consider a sentence that will hopefully allow him to eventually get out, rejoin society as a productive member of society. Thank you, Your Honor.
All right, Mr. Onusik, what do you want to tell me before I impose sentence?
3 years ago, Your Honor, I was not the man I am today. 3 years ago, I had substance abuse issues. Actually, when I committed these crimes, I was drunk, as well as the federal crimes. And all that stems from 2017, when I started using. And that's why I committed those crimes in 2017. I actually had a federal and state sentence run concurrent, and instead of going to federal prison, I went to state prison instead. I tried to go to federal prison, but it wasn't working, so I took advantage of my state time. I went to school, went to college, took over 15 programs. I had plans to become a real estate agent when I came home, and then 3 days before I was to get released, the federal marshals came and got me and said that I still owed federal time, which I knew I didn't because my sentence was run concurrent. And I reached out to my federal judge, and he told me, yes, Mr. Onusik, you are correct, your time was concurrent, but I can't do anything for you until you get to the BOP facility. So I figured it'd take him a month to calculate my time, and then I'd go home, but I never went home. I went to a level 7 maximum security federal penitentiary, and I was at a level 2 state prison. And so the prison I went to was USB Hazleton. I don't know if you know who Whitey Bulger is, but they murdered him a couple months prior to me getting there. So that just tells you how violent that environment was. So for someone to take the time to be rehabilitated and go into an extremely violent environment just changed everything for me. And so I had PTSD from that experience, and it took me a year and a half legally to get home. I got emergency release. I had no halfway house, no nothing. And so when I got home, I told my parole officer, look, I need help. I need counseling. I need to know how to cope. And she told me word for word, she said, suck it up and get a job because you owe federal restitution. You have to pay this money back. And so that's what I did. I sucked it up. And I went right back to using the Xanax and the alcohol to cope with the PTSD. And that led me to commit more crimes, to feed my substance abuse issues. And that's why we're here today. And the second I got arrested, I told myself, I said, which path am I going down? Am I going to keep coming to prison and keep having the substance abuse issues? Or am I going to do something with my life? I have 2 kids that need me. And my daughter's going through this for a second time with me. So that hurts me a lot because I grew up without a father myself. And so I made the decision then and there that I wasn't going to live this life anymore. And so I told myself that right then and there I'm going to become a citizen. You know, I'm done being a criminal. I'm done having substance abuse issues. I'm done making excuses. I asked for help. Nobody wanted to give it to me, but I had to take accountability for my own self and my own actions to help myself. And that's what I've done since the second I've been incarcerated. Since I've been incarcerated, I've took over maybe like 6 to 8 programs. I have 3 jobs. I'm a suicide companion, I'm a tutor down in education, and I'm a unit orderly. And through those 2 jobs, I'm able to pay for my own school and put myself through school. And I'm also, I have 0 infractions, 0 write-ups in a level 7 penitentiary where people are getting stabbed every day and murdered. And I have 0 infractions, none at all. I'm in a program called the Challenge Program, where it helps you identify your criminal thinking errors and your cognitive thinking errors, and it helps you identify ways with substance abuse. So I've been getting treatment. I'm also working in a PTSD book while I'm there as well, myself. And one of the main things I've learned from that challenge program, I haven't completed it yet, I'm in the middle of it, so I came here. But one of the most important things I've learned for that is the 5 rules of rational thinking, which every time you have an irrational thought, you compare it to the 5 rules of rational thinking. And if you can't answer yes to 3 of those questions, you have to change that thought. So the first rule in that the 5 rules are your thoughts based on objective reality / facts? The second one, are your thoughts helping you achieve your short-term and long-term goals? And the third one is, are your thoughts helping you to keep out of conflict with others? And the fourth one is, are your thoughts, or the fifth one is, are your thoughts helping you feel the way you want to feel without abusing alcohol or drugs? And so that's a 9-month program, but I'm in phase 2. It's 3 phases, and that's what I've been doing every day. I plan to come home like I'm coming home tomorrow, because if I don't do the things I need to do now, how am I going to do that when I come home? That's how I've been living my life incarcerated. And I plan to come home and be a positive role model to not only my kids, but other kids who are maybe in my predicament, who just need help to guide themselves throughout life. I want to make a positive impact on the world and the people around me. One thing my federal judge told me that sticks with me every day is that she said that the thing that you do, good or bad, causes a ripple effect. It doesn't just affect you, it affects the people around you, the people around them, and the people around them. I do not want to make my substance abuse issues as an excuse for my actions, but a reason for the crimes, Your Honor. And I'd like to also apologize to not only the victims, but the victims' families and the business owners as well. There's no excuse for what I did, Your Honor. And I'm holding myself accountable, and I just ask that you run my time concurrent and give me a chance to redeem myself.
All right, thank you. Ms. Alessi?
Thank you, Your Honor. The defendant in this case committed a series of brazen and terrifying robberies, all while on parole for robbery. In each instance, the defendant displayed calculated and menacing behavior, and in 2 of the instances, he threatened to shoot the victims if they didn't comply with his commands. While committing the Medina County robbery, the defendant told the victim that he would blow his brains out and demanded that he get down on his knees. Although the defendant did not actually display a weapon, he kept his hands in his jacket pocket as if he had one, and the victim followed his commands. He was terrified. Then, because the safe had a 15-minute time delay, the defendant waited the entire 15 minutes in order to get into the safe with the victim down on his knees. In speaking with the victim in this case, Andrew Hirschberger, he told me that this was the longest 15 minutes of his life. Eventually, he came to leave that job, in part because of this robbery. And finally, before fleeing during the course of that robbery, the defendant had the victim get down on the ground and count to 200 so that he could flee before police arrived. When committing the Menor robbery, the defendant also told this victim that if she made any sudden moves, that he would shoot her in the face. He kept his hands in his hoodie as if he had a gun, and he told her not to look at him or he would kill her. Again, this victim was absolutely terrified, thinking of her grandchildren and pleading with him because she genuinely thought that she could die that day. The defendant again had this victim lay on the ground, face down, with her hands behind her head, and start counting in order for him to flee before law enforcement could arrive. The defendant has a complete disregard for the psychological trauma on those he held captive those days. These victims were not simply robbed, they were kidnapped, they were paralyzed with fear, forced to comply under the threat of death, and will forever remember the days that those offenses happened. Even in the Richland County offense, although no threats or weapons were displayed in that case, the victim reported that she still continues to suffer nightmares up until this day from the defendant's actions. The defendant's conduct reflects an escalating pattern of violent behavior, undeterred by prior imprisonment. In 2014, the defendant was convicted of a misdemeanor domestic violence. In 2018, in the Northern District of Ohio, the defendant was convicted of 3 counts of bank robbery for robbing 3 separate banks and was sentenced to 44 months in prison. In 2018, in Summit County, he was also convicted of robbery, a felony of the 3rd degree, where he was sentenced to 36 months in prison to be served concurrent with his federal case. Once he got out, he was on parole, and he made it about 2 years into that parole before committing these offenses. After committing these offenses, he robbed 2 additional banks and was subsequently convicted in the Northern District, Ohio, of 2 counts of bank robbery and 1 count of felon in possession of a firearm, where he was sentenced to 137 months in prison, which is just over 11 years. And he is currently serving that sentence. Also in connection with those offenses, He pled to a failure to comply with the order of single level police officer in Summit County, which that sentence was also served or ordered to be served concurrent with his federal sentence. Respectfully, the defendant had the opportunity to be a productive member of society, to be a father, the first time he got out of prison. But instead, he continued with this pattern of conduct. He made a series of choices over the course of months. There was at least a month between each of these robberies, and then a few months before the subsequent bank robberies. And at no point was he deterred. I think the fact that he committed these offenses while on parole demonstrates a complete failure of rehabilitation and demonstrates that he is a continuing danger to the public. In light of his criminal history, the violent and traumatizing nature of these offenses, and the need to protect the public, the state is recommending a sentence of 15 years to be served consecutive to his current prison sentence. Consecutive sentences are necessary to ensure the defendant will no longer pose a threat to our community. The defendant has no credit as he has been serving a sentence throughout the pendency of this case.
What were the dates of the federal robberies that he's doing 137 months for?
Your Honor, it's going
The
to have
time frame, rough time frame. Do you know?
it would have been around June, July, directly after these offenses.
Okay. Of what year?
2022.
So when was the Richland? Do you know the date of the Richland?
The date of the Richland offense was March 7th of 2022. Medina was April 25th of 2022, and Menor was May 6th of 2022.
Okay. Was there a reason that the feds did not take those 3 counties?
The reason that I was given when asked specifically why they didn't include those is they believed that they had an identity problem and they didn't think they could prove beyond a reasonable doubt that the defendant also committed these offenses. That is in part the reason for the delay in indictment in this case is once our office got the case, it did require additional investigation by our local detectives to piece together all of these robberies.
Did any of these did Medina or Richland believe that the feds were taking their cases?
Yes, they were under that belief. All of the police reports from our county as well as Medina and Richland County had been provided to the feds in addition to all the discovery, believing that they would be taking it. Once I obtained the case, I personally reached out to the prosecutors in both of those jurisdictions to inquire if we could actually take this case as part of ours here. And during those conversations, I learned also that they were under the belief that the defendant had been prosecuted for these crimes.
Okay, so the feds didn't want to, you don't have to agree or disagree with me, but the feds failed to do their job, most likely because they didn't want to put in the work to do their job.
I would agree with that.
Okay. All right, I have received victim impact statements from several of the victims in this case. I've also received a letter from Mr. Onusic's mother. I've considered what Mr. Onusik said, what Mr. Watson and what Ms. Aleshi have said. I've considered all the provisions of 29, 29, 11, 12, and 13, and 14. This is one hellacious spree that you went on starting the first time you were in prison and right after you got out. It seems to me, from my knowledge of how the feds work, that had they taken these cases, then your 137 months would have shot up dramatically, but they didn't. In part because they weren't very competent in their job or very diligent in their job during that time frame. But you put mean, I read the statements from these folks, and you led many of them, if not all of them, to believe that they were going to die because of what you did. And you talk about your your state of mind with the Xanax and with the alcohol, but you well know, because you as much as said it, that you're the one that put yourself in that position for the reasons you put yourself in that position. So there's a price to pay for that, and I commend you for doing what you've done so far, because it's going to help you in the long run, but it's going to be a long run. And so it's up to you to keep that up, so when you do get out, that there's something there for you besides what you've been doing for the last 7 years. With all that, on count 2, I'm going to sentence you to 12 months in prison. On count 4 to 36 months in prison. On count 5 to a definite term of 3 years in prison. On count 8, a term of 36 months in prison. And on count 9, a definite minimum term of 6 years up to an indefinite maximum term of 9 years in prison. And whether you serve any beyond that 6 years with regard to that sentence is determined by criteria of the Ohio Department of Corrections. Now, counts 5, a 3-year sentence, and count 9, the 6 to 9 year sentence, will be served consecutive to each other. Counts 2, 4, and 8 will be served concurrent to counts 2, or counts 5 and 9 rather. And that entire sentence, essentially of 9 up to 12 years, will be served consecutive to the federal sentence that you're currently serving. The federal or consecutive sentences are necessary to protect the public from future crime and for the appropriate punishment, and they are not disproportionate in any way to the seriousness of your conduct and the danger that you pose. In your history of criminal conduct, when all this was going on and you were on post-release control, demonstrates that they are necessary to protect the public from future crime. When you get out on this case, then you may be on, or you will be on post-release control for at least 18 months up to 3 years under the parole authority. They will place conditions on you. If you violate the conditions, they could return you to prison for up to 9 months for each violation, up to 1/2 of my sentence. If the violation is a new felony, then you could get an additional consecutive prison sentence for the violation, the maximum of which would be the greater of 12 months or the time left under your post-release control. Any remaining charges are dismissed, and costs are assessed. Anything else, Ms. Alessi?
No, Your Honor. Thank you.
Mr. Watson?
Copy of that.
Nothing further, Your Honor.